Welcome back to CMC Conversations. This is our second episode. In today's episode, we're having a conversation with two of the CMC trustees. And we're going to talk a little bit about what a trustee is, the history of the trustees in the CMC. We're going to talk about what they do for the conference. We're going to talk about how you become a trustee, or how at least they became trustees. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about why people give money in churches and how that is transitioned. I think that we can sometimes approach the idea of being a trustee as being boring, doing the job that no one else wants to do. We might all agree that what the trustees do is very important and crucial to church ministry, but we don't always find it very exciting. Both of the men that I'm talking with today have a passion and a desire to do this type of work, this work that is behind the scenes, but gives stability for churches to function in the ways that they want to function. And the trustees, by doing their work with the budget, are able to give a foundation for this conference, a foundation that this conference can use to do ministry. Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I had a lot of fun talking with these guys, learning about the passion that they have to do this sort of work. And I hope that this episode can help you understand what a trustee is a little better, that you can understand that there is a passion and desire to do that job well. Before we get going, we'll just start with some introductions. So, gentlemen, why don't you just tell me who you are and the role that you have as a trustee, or maybe start with the role that you have in your own church, and then we'll get into the trustee stuff.
I'm Jake Weeb, and farming here with my wife and family. And was elected in the Silverfelt Church just down the road back in '97, and we had been serving there as youth leaders for a number of years before that, and got elected as a deacon, and in 2000 got elected as a conference deacon, which entailed a few other things, one of them being the chair of the board of trustees.
Right, I'm Dennis Friesen. I'm deacon at the Steinbach CMC Church. So I do a lot of the finances and some of the leadership part at the Steinbach Church, and I was elected as a deacon in 2001 in Steinbach, and have been a deacon since. Also got elected as a trustee around 2004, working on with Jake and some of the other guys. So we have 5 trustees on the board, and all from different churches, and Jake is our chairperson.
Hey, Dennis, just quickly, you were first elected as a pastor and you turned that election down, right?
And no, I got elected first as a deacon.
Okay.
And then a number of years later as a pastor, but I did decide not to go into that. I didn't feel that was my calling.
Okay. So that's interesting for me to know, because you do feel called to this role. And yes, I think that's important. So last episode, then we had the bishop and assistant bishop, and I should have probably had you there, Jake, because you're part of the executive team, right?
Yes, I am. It's a good team. It's good to work together, and we've meshed well. I think it's good to have those kind of working relationships.
Absolutely. Okay, so in my experience with trustees, I only really learned about a trustee because my mom was the janitor at our church back home. And so she needed a new vacuum. She goes to the trustees, says this one's terrible, it's not sucking like it should. And so then she's able to plead her case to get funding, and then the trustees went out and bought a new vacuum because it was necessary to the running of the church. And I know that you guys don't take care of vacuum cleaners for individual churches, but you do take care of the finances, as far as I understand. But tell us what a trustee is.
Well, the term trustee and the and the job outline is in our Constitution. So the Constitution defines the assignment of responsibilities to the Board of Trustees, and then the bylaws give the job description of the conference deacon as well as the Board of Trustees. The principles and practices gives the process for the conference deacon and the Board of Trustees in fulfilling their duties. So yes, they do revolve largely around finances, around the assets or the estates of the church and of the conference, and then it kind of morphs into more than that, because times have really changed to where there's a lot of issues to be current with in terms of the regulations that we need to be able to follow, be aware of. So yeah, the job is a little broader, has become broader over a period of time.
Dennis, do you want to add a little to that?
No, I think Jake did a good job. And like I say, he's been around longer than I have on this stuff, and so he knows quite a bit more about this than I do.
You talked a little bit about how you became a trustee. You were elected as a deacon, and then who elected you to the Board of Trustees, or how did that process happen?
Yeah, so at the ministerial level, there's I guess a recommendation or a vote for trustee, or there's an open position, and then all deacons are eligible for that position. And so I got elected by the conference ministerial onto the Board of Trustees.
Jake, you want to take this time to talk a little bit about the history of the trustees?
Well, so yeah, I mean, our conference is one of the old church conferences that came out back in 1874, coming to Manitoba. And so at the time we had, as I understand it, one mother church. It was just one church. It was in Gorditz, which is now known as Randolph. The church was called the Gorditzer Church. And so that was the main church. It's currently a historic site, but from there, because our people were primarily farming people, we had in the RM of Hanover, we had quite a number of small communities. And because travel was not as easy as it is today, so these communities weren't often that terribly far apart. But every little community, or a lot of communities, had their own church. So when I came on board, there was no Board of Trustees. There had been one conference deacon, and so coming on board and then electing a Board of Trustees for me has been really positive, because the workload is shared with a board. It's not an individual's personal way of thinking only. You can test your views on with other deacons as well. So I think it's been very positive. So definitely that transition has been a positive thing. The other thing that drove the transition, or the two things I think in my view that drove the transition, was that record keeping for the government became a little bit more formal, and the other was the fact that we were transitioning to salaried staff. So early on, with all of us being lay workers, pastors doing itinerant preaching, there wasn't a lot of paperwork as far as government is concerned. I think the conference kept meticulous records for all kinds of things, the births and the families involved. Everything was very meticulous. We still have a lot of those archives. But as the government became more involved in terms of just ensuring that we were doing what we said we were doing, we were definitely moving down a path of formality.
somehow you managed to walk through that process. So you were there when there was no board, but a single individual, you were that individual.
No, as I came on,
Oh, okay.
the concept of a board was immediate as well.
Okay. So as the government rules became more complicated, it became more and more necessary for a board to exist. And then you joined as the board was formed with the forming of the board.
Yeah.
And you were right away in charge of the whole thing?
Well, in charge might have, we had one gentleman that was a part of the conference, and I think he'd been a part of forever. Like he Pastor Corny Martins, he was a role model, and he'd been there for so long, and I leaned on him a lot. Questions about anything, and he would say, "Oh yeah, I think those minutes are they're in the filing cabinet in the office," and he would find them. And so we didn't have policies that had been formalized, but he could remember the year and somewhere where the minutes were, and it seemed pretty formidable for me, because I'll tell you, it was a straight up learning curve.
So I'll direct this to Dennis. Would you be able to tell me was the main benefit of having trustees? Like, personally, I know that you guys take care of so many things that I'm just thankful I don't have to do. But in your opinion, was the main benefit of your role?
Well, I think, and like we said before, the finances is a big part of our role, and so that entails just about every aspect of the conference. And so when we're talking, budgets, writing up budgets and presenting them and hoping to meet those things, that's a big part. I think a benefit of the trustees being able to just to dedicate the time to those kinds of things. Legal matters, any kind of legal matters, run through the trustee board. When we have some government, if there were to be an audit or something, then it wouldn't be everybody having to produce something. It would be through the trustee board, making sure that they would take charge of that and bring that information forward to what's needed. And so I just feel that there's a benefit in having people that are gifted as well as interested in these matters to be on a board like this.
Absolutely. I know, especially that legal stuff is over my head. Jake, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and so all of it, we're not actually lawyers either, and so for us to be able to get a legal opinion, I've certainly grown up feeling freer to do that, where I'm at, and so to use resources to get a proper legal opinion for the church, for the conference, to me is worth it, and we can move forward confidently, just knowing that this is the ground we stand on. We're doing the right thing here, and so it's a benefit that way, and I think that's been some of the requirements that came along while we were. I think Dennis has been on the board during the same time. But for example, as the social media and the internet became more mainstream, the government indicated that we would have to have a privacy policy to protect individuals in our organization from being exploited online, and so we had to develop a privacy policy. We did that together with Abundance Canada and one of the other conferences, and pastoral staff policy, safe place policy, just trying to get some things in place so that we have quick access. We don't have to look for the minutes. The policies are developed. If they do get updated or changed, we just change them, and we have quick and easy access.
So this brings us into some more of the specifics on how the trustees operate. Does every decision have to go through the board? Does every decision have to be voted on? Or are there certain decisions where you can say, Dennis takes this one, the next guy takes that, and you just figure out that aspect?
When it comes to the finances in the conference, after the budget has been passed, within those parameters, we've got latitude to move. So there isn't issues within that. Outside of that, then we make the decision as a whole board. And so just to ensure that nobody's running ahead or doing things on their own.
So we as trustee board, we write up a budget, propose it to the conference ministerial at the ministerial convention. If it passes at the convention, it gets forwarded to all the churches. Then each individual church has a look at the budget, and it gets voted on there. And those votes go to the delegates at the delegate meeting, and the delegates say whatever the church has asked them to say at the meeting. So the delegates have the final say on the budget. Once the budget gets passed there, then it goes to the individual boards that have budgets, and they use their budgets as deemed necessary.
So I think that makes sense. So the budget is, like we talked about, is one of the main things that you guys discuss and decide on. And so you have a few meetings, you have a discussion, you look at the numbers and be like, that number stayed the same every year. It's time it goes up, or that number stayed the same. It's not going to go up because we won't need more than that amount. We'll go to this next question about the sale of Carlsbad. And I don't want to get into too many of the unnecessary details, but just as an example of how you guys operate as trustees, I know that took a while to go through, but can you just walk us through some of the steps that help the trustees manage that sale?
So what happened in Carlsbad, and what has happened as the churches and the different ministry areas have evolved, we've had in various places in the conference, we've had places where churches have been planted 150 years ago or 100 years ago. Sometime in this case it was only 35 years ago, but suddenly you find yourself in a place where we're no longer effective in that area for whatever reason. Either we don't have enough people or something's happened, and so you're faced with some questions at that point. How do you stay viable? And so in this case, the small congregation that was left in this location there in Winnipeg, they approached the conference and said they were prepared to shut down, and that we could take over in terms of dissolving the assets. How the assets get dissolved again is defined in the Constitution, and so we followed that process. We in this process, the executive as a whole was involved to ensure that the people that were left at Carlsbad would have a landing place, someplace that they would continue to be feel at home worshiping and being taken care of. So that was happening, and then we began to look for options. We had the church appraised and began to do some advertising to see if we could sell it. We'd been approached once, where even after there had been a verbal commitment, the deal went south, and so we had to start again. That so there was a fair bit of time involved with exactly that process, because we thought we were already there. And so the second group that came along happened to be a group that had come here from a foreign country, and so we're looking for, they were being helped along by a local another Mennonite church. And so, but they were looking for their own building, their own place to worship. They were a fairly large group already. And so this was a perfect fit for them. And we were at the right place at the right time in terms of looking to sell. So that was the process. I know in this whole process, I mean, there was a ton of legal work to be done. We were dealing with the city of Winnipeg. We were dealing with there were some street improvements going on alongside that street. We were dealing with city of Winnipeg on those issues. Yeah, just that one was good to get off of our plate. You know, as a board of trustees, we want to pave the way so that ministry in the church can continue, and that we don't all get bogged down with those things. But this one was a little onerous. We sometimes felt like it was bogging all of us down.
If I'm not mistaken, Jake, you kind of take on a lot of the individual little questions yourself.
Yeah, I was so my time was a little bit more flexible on the farm. So I would meet with him when I needed to, and those kind of things. One thing that we should mention is the fact that we are registered as a religious society, and as such, even the selling of a property has to be approved by a judge. So we, you know, so the objectives of the sale, if we were to want to give a good deal, if the property valuation came in at $1 million, for example, and we want to sell it for 900,000. We better have a reason for it, because the judge would be looking for why are you giving money that the government has not received taxes on to somebody, to another entity. So if that entity has the same objectives as ours, in this case it did, the group that purchased the church was another evangelical group. So that was good. So being able to sell it a bit cheaper to them still met the criteria, because the objectives from our evangelical group to theirs was the same. So definitely that's a fact. That's what the government's watching for. You know, we have to be careful that we aren't seen as an in-house club. We're not just sponsoring each other in our group. We are actually a church that's objectives is to help the community around us to find Christ, and in the process we're helping them physically, emotionally as we can, and so we do those kind of things, and then spiritually. So they're not opposed to those things. They just want to make sure that that's what we're doing. So it's for that reason that we don't give our own members special rates when our members want to rent a building for a wedding or those kind of things. They don't get a special rate. They get the same rate as anybody else. And you know, we're just following our what we say we were going to do as a church.
Right. If you put protocols in place, you have to follow them. And if you define yourself, especially with the government, you define yourself a certain way, you have to maintain that definition.
Yeah. So like Jake was saying, you know, there's a lot of work and a lot of legal work, meetings, different things. So we drove out to Winnipeg a few times to meet with potential purchasers, especially when they have had already given interest. And so again, yeah, you're just, it's a lot of legwork. And Jake did most of that because he was, like he said, he had the time.
You don't need all the trustees there.
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
It was a good process for me to go through anyway, just getting some of that experience and seeing how this works. Again, it was a lengthy process, you know.
And so some of these different responsibilities get divvied up, including with a bigger project, driving out to meet a lawyer or the potential buyer.
Yeah, when there's guys with different schedules and different types of work, it doesn't always make it. So not everybody can make it. So then the guys that can make it do the best that they can, and so if you can have, you know, half or a little over half of the board there at one place, that's always good. It's best if all of them are there, but that doesn't always work out.
Right. I think that's a common theme in this conference, anyways. Is people just trying to do the best they can. We all have different schedules, and most of us aren't full time. Like, this isn't a full time job. It's evenings, weekends. I know you guys both work full time. That being said, we have a delegate meeting coming up. At least while we're filming this, delegate meeting is about a week away. Can you guys just walk me through how you prepare for that?
Yeah, as an executive, there's a few items that will be voted on that are of a broader scope. There's some changes happening in the Constitution that are being proposed. So that's a broader scope. Our part would oversee the radio board, the board of missions, and the home missions. And so while we are directly involved with the home missions component, the bigger picture of the radio and the radio board and the foreign missions is also part of our oversight. So we definitely look at that. And then even as in preparation, we will have been asking the local churches to send their financial statements into the conference office, and then it would get forwarded to from there to our accountant, who prepares a consolidated financial statement for the delegate meeting.
Dennis, you're usually the one that gets suckered into presenting the budget, right?
Yeah, Jake seems to want to twist somebody's arm. Usually he's usually got an excuse. I'm going to do this, so somebody else has to do that. So yeah, well, I've done it. Leonard has done it. Earl has done it as well. And so this year we have a new trustee, Darren from Fort St. John. So maybe we could get Darren to do it. He's never done it before, so it might be a good place to start.
Do you have a specific role, Dennis, in preparing for the delegate meeting?
Beforehand, Jake will send out an email or a text or something and ask, who would volunteer to present certain things. Jake will be doing the trustee report and some of those things, and so some of us get to do some of the other things. I think it's good that we all take a part in it. That way, our faces get out there and people know who the trustees are. And then they can say, oh, I need to maybe contact this guy or that guy, instead of everybody calling Jake and Jake being overwhelmed.
I just have one last question for you guys. It's going to come across maybe slightly offensive, and I don't mean it to be. Just as an example, I like to bake, and I like to be creative when I bake something, but I don't like to wash the dishes afterwards. Often when I think about what you guys do, I think it's like washing the dishes. It's like cleaning the house. It's all these things that people can't necessarily see. But when you host people into the churches, when you have people come into your home and things are cleaned up and taken care of, and that wall doesn't have mold on it, and the dishes are fresh out of the dishwasher, and everyone can function normally. A lot of people don't think about those things, but they have to get done. And I think that's budget planning. That's preparing for church buildings. That's all the behind the scenes stuff that you guys take care of. How do you stay motivated doing a thankless job?
I'm okay with it. I like I like behind the scenes. That's who I am, and that's what I do, and I'm okay with that. I enjoy seeing things working smoothly and working well. I'm a ducks in a row kind of guy, so I like to plan ahead and have those things done. And so this job as a trustee helps me do those kinds of things, and so yeah, that's my motivation.
Yeah, I mean, I will have to say it has not been thankless entirely. There's been individuals that appreciate what you just described there, Alex. You're absolutely right. When it's clean, when everything's in order, it just makes ministry better. You invite somebody into your home for hosting, and the atmosphere is right, and it all sets the stage for conversation, for things to happen. And by that I don't mean that those things can't happen otherwise either, because the Lord does miracles however and wherever. But I think when we do our part to kind of clean up in advance of and prepare the way, it's huge. And that kind of just reminds me of something that I learned in this process a number of years ago. And I was reading a book called Not Your Parents' Offering Plate by J. Cliff Christopher. And he's referring to something that's changed over time. I mentioned earlier that we were at church or a conference in transition. And so he's referring to how people used to donate their offering to the church because they are the church, and that's just what you do. And it was their act of worship. You didn't have to be coerced. This was just what was expected. This is what you did. Today, people are more informed. They know that there's good ministry happening, over here, over there. There's people lobbying for that donation dollar. And so as churches, if we're completely silent and we just assume people will worship with their offerings, then they will. They want to be generous. But the two things that I learned as I was reading this book is the act of generosity and the motivation behind that act of generosity. And so the author of the book is talking about understanding why people give generously. And I remember as a deacon in the local church, we sometimes wondered when we were struggling perhaps with our local budget, and we weren't meeting the budget, and we're not sure why, but people weren't meeting. They were often very generous, but sometimes we were lagging behind. And we'd have a speaker come in, and he would walk out with an offering that was 2 or 3 times higher than what we were short from the same group of people. We said, well, what happened here? Like, what are we missing here? That the money seems to be out there, and people they have a heart to give. And so the author is saying that understanding why people give is so important. And this is one of the things that we've learned as a board of trustees, that it's, even the job isn't just to manage the money that comes in, but if we can be of help by understanding why, that's huge. And so the thing that the author here is identifying is that people who have a belief in the mission of the institution or of the charity, they believe in the mission, and they have a high regard for the leadership, and they have a high regard for the fiscal responsibility of the leadership. Then they will give, and then they're motivated to give. And so that whole idea of generosity and feeling the generosity has been amazing, and just understanding some of these concepts. We said, if we can share that with the other churches, that's huge. And so that's been an exciting highlight for me, learning that process myself and then being able to share it with others.
Yeah, I think that is huge. I think that's also, it's a very similar motivation for even sharing the gospel or sharing invitation to come into church. People that are outside the church aren't looking up the best website or the most entertaining service, or they aren't looking up those things. They're listening to their coworker who talks to them. They're listening to their friends, and the people that enjoy being at church will tell people about being at church. If that lines up with what you're saying, if people believe in the cause, they're going to give. If people believe that the leadership have a good vision, and if they believe that the leaders are going to handle that money well, then they'll continue to give to that cause. Would you have suggestions on how to strengthen that cause, or how to strengthen that vision in churches that people can grasp?
When we can tell the good news story, when we can tell on behalf of us, or invite a Sunday school teacher to tell the good news. We hear things in the hallways of the church building sometimes. Hey, you know what happened in Sunday school today? Little Johnny, this is what he told me. This is what he told me happened at home. They'll have a story. We got to share those stories, and those stories tell us that God is at work. This isn't about building a new church. It's not about a bigger program. It's about God being at work, and we get to tell the story. We get to watch the story, and God has blessed us to be part of it. And then lo and behold, we get to share it with others, and what people just come on side and they just want to participate and help along.
Businesses often say is, if they don't communicate their business, whether it's in advertising or whether it's from one department to the next, that business doesn't do well. And that is for us as well. We need to communicate better in all aspects, whether we're sharing the gospel, whether we're communicating a need from one department to the next department, or from one committee to another committee, or from some person that's in the pews to the leadership. There's got to be good communication back and forth, and in order for this thing that we call church to work. And when we do that as trustees, communicating our needs or the things that are going on, or whether it is the executive or the pastors or somebody else communicating these things, people get excited about what's happening, and things go on.
So if I understand correctly, you guys are saying that we need to share more personal stories, like make the gospel more personal. And Dennis, you're saying share that clearly, and not just the stories, but the concerns.
Yes.
So one of the things I mentioned earlier is about a privacy policy that we have, and so in all of this, we have to make sure that the people that we're talking about are okay with us telling their story. If they are, I mean, it's great if they can tell their story themselves. But in other cases, we can be the messenger. We can talk about them as they allow us. And I just think of one story when we were still youth leaders, and this one young boy kept coming to youth. He would ask for prayer for his dad every single Friday. Pray for my dad. Pray that he'll get saved. Pray for my dad. And that young boy is currently a pastor in BC, and he baptized his dad a year ago, and he officiated at his dad's funeral during this last year. And we praise the Lord for that.
Amen. Yeah, that's just hearing that story. That's so much more powerful than the theories and the hypotheticals out there. Like that actually affects the heart. Well, thank you guys so much. You guys clearly have a unique passion for this sort of work, and I'm extremely thankful for both of you and for the whole board of trustees. I don't know what we'd do without you. Well, we wouldn't be a charitable organization. Uh, we would be a lot more flustered and busy with all the work that you guys take care of. So thank you guys so much for everything you do.